The movie opens with a young girl named Furiosa, living peacefully with her people in a lush green oasis, hidden amidst a vast, arid desert. One sunny afternoon, Furiosa and her friend Valkyrie are joyfully picking peaches from a tree, but suddenly, their laughter fades. They see the unmistakable shadow of raiders from the biker horde. Realizing the danger, Furiosa slips away to sabotage the bikers' machines. But just as she begins to disable one of the bikes, a raider spots her. Without hesitating, Furiosa blows her whistle as hard as she can, calling out to her mom Mary and warning the others of the threat. Before anyone can come to her aid, the bikers whisk Furiosa away, tearing through the desert as her home fades from view. Mary, fierce and relentless, won't let her daughter be taken. She grabs her gear and chases them down, determined to rescue her. As night falls, Mary manages to take out a few of the bikers, one by one. Two of the remaining raiders glance back and realize, "She's still coming." "Leave the girl," one of them shouts, but the other refuses, insisting they bring her to their leader, Dementis. Their race continues, but Mary isn't backing down. She takes down another biker, but the last raider manages to escape with Furiosa, finally reaching the ruthless bikers' horde settlement. The raider stumbles into Dementis' presence, declaring, "I found a place of abundance." She knows her people are in danger. Thinking fast, she sabotages the raider's bike, and he's suddenly gasping in pain, his neck wounded. Furiosa is then brought before Dementis, who is clearly shocked at the sight of a healthy, vibrant young girl. His physician inspects her and remarks, "She's healthy, unlike anyone I've ever seen." Realizing Furiosa must come from a place of wealth and life, Dementis demands, "Where did you come from?" Furiosa says nothing. Dementis turns to the injured raider. "Show us the way," he commands. But before the raider can utter a word, Furiosa kicks his injured neck. He begins to bleed out, collapsing before them. Dementis' expression shifts from anger to admiration. Smirking, he orders, "Treat her well, give her a place to rest." Meanwhile, Mary has snuck into the biker camp. With deadly precision, she takes out the guards one by one to save her daughter. She finds Furiosa, and together they start to escape, but Dementis and his men are alerted. They give chase, their shouts filling the night air. Mary, realizing time is running out, stops and turns to Furiosa. "Go back to the green oasis," she urges, her voice steady but pleading. Furiosa protests, her heart breaking, but Mary insists, "It's for the safety of everyone." Before parting, Mary hands Furiosa a single seed. Then, with a fierce embrace, Mary urges Furiosa onto the path home, staying behind to face the bikers. She fights with everything she has, but soon enough, they overpower her. Helpless, Furiosa watches from a distance as her mother is captured, and then they crucify her. Defying all reason, she rushes back, determined to stop Dementis from hurting Mary. But she's powerless against him. Dementis forces her to witness her mother's last moments, a brutal reminder of his strength. Days pass, and Dementis begins taking Furiosa on his brutal scavenging raids. She watches his savage acts in silence. Despite her silence, Dementis' history man constantly prods her, coaxing, "If the boss finds you valuable, he'll always protect you." But one night, she carves a map of the green oasis into her skin, a secret reminder of home. On a later raid, the horde encounters an injured man from a settlement called the Citadel, a land of lush vegetation. Dementis' eyes gleam with greed. Rallying his bikers, he leads them straight to the Citadel, intent on seizing it. But its leader, Immortan Joe, remains unmoved, barely acknowledging Dementis' threats as he walks away. Joe's sons, Rictus and Scrotus, however, answer with an attack on Dementis and his gang. In the chaos, someone attempts to kidnap Furiosa, but Dementis, in a rare act of protection, rescues her, whisking her out of harm's way. Later, they regroup near Gastown, an oil rig that fuels the Citadel. Watching as a supply truck departs, Dementis seizes his opportunity. He and his men seize the truck, covering themselves in white paint to mimic Joe's soldiers and infiltrate the Citadel. As they approach, Immortan Joe, sensing something isn't right, refuses to open the gate. Dementis realizes he must make the act look genuine. With cold resolve, he kills some of his own men, now painted to look like Joe's soldiers. Joe, seeing the bloodshed, finally orders the gate opened, but as it swings wide, hidden among the trucks, Dementis' men emerge from their hiding spots. Joe's face tightens in anger. He realizes, far too late, that he's been deceived. One of Dementis' men delivers a message to Immortan Joe, announcing that Dementis wants control of Gastown. Joe's eyes narrow with anger, but after a moment, Joe smirks, agreeing to let Dementis inside, so it'll be easier to kill him. When Dementis arrives, he doesn't come alone. He brings Gastown's leader and, astonishingly, a remote control. "I've planted a bomb in Gastown," he declares with a wicked grin. Forced to play along, Joe listens as Dementis lays out his demands. More food, more water, and control over Gastown. But as they negotiate, Joe's gaze lands on Furiosa, standing quietly behind Dementis. "Who's she?" Joe asks, intrigued. Dementus smirks, "She's my daughter." But Joe's interest only grows. Dementus, confident, replies that Furiosa hasn't spoken since her mother's death. Suddenly, Furiosa speaks, her voice cutting through the tension. "I'm not his daughter. He killed my mom." Joe's eyes widen in surprise, and he notes her pale face. Dementus waves it off, insisting she's perfectly healthy. His physician confirms it too, yet Joe's gaze lingers on Furiosa. With a calculating smile, Joe offers his deal. He'll agree to Dementus's terms, if he gets Furiosa and the physician in return. Dementus hesitates, but eventually agrees. Once Joe's men escort Furiosa away, Joe orders her to a chamber reserved for his wives. Furiosa's stomach churns. She realizes he's planning to make her one of his future brides. Her disgust deepens when Rictus, Joe's son, begins showing interest in her, his leering gaze haunting her. One night, after refusing Rictus's advances, Furiosa takes a sharp knife and starts cutting her hair, fashioning it into a wig. Days later, Rictus barges into her room and picks her up, dragging her out with force. But as he tugs at her hair, the wig comes off in his hand. Furiosa seizes her chance and bolts outside, hiding herself until Rictus, confused, loses track of her when his brother calls him away. To escape notice, Furiosa begins posing as a boy, joining Scrotus and the other men who work on Joe's supply vehicles. One day, as Scrotus orders them to lift a truck, a cable snaps loose. He points at Furiosa, "Get down there and reattach it." Despite being terrified, Furiosa bravely jumps down and does the job flawlessly. Impressed by her courage, Scrotus promotes her to direct the crane. A few days later, Scrotus and Rictus gather the men in the plant, announcing their latest project, a war rig that can withstand attacks on their supply runs. Furiosa joins the team at work, and as the days pass, the war rig nears completion. Suddenly, a man named Praetorian Jack arrives at the manufacturing site. Furiosa watches him, curiosity sparking. Who is this guy? She soon learns Jack will be the one driving the war rig. He's known for his flawless record on Joe's supply runs, after all. Once the war rig is finally completed, Jack takes the wheel and heads out to Gastown, set on bringing back a fresh supply of gasoline. But trouble strikes. In the wasteland, they're ambushed by allies of Dementus. One of Dementus's allies, fed up with how Dementus has been running Gastown, launches a brutal attack. In the chaos, the war rig's engine sputters and dies, and Jack yells to his mechanic, Black Thumb, to get down and fix it. Underneath, Black Thumb finds Furiosa, who's ready with her bike, planning her escape once they're deep enough in the desert. He's stunned to see Furiosa under the war rig, but hands her the tools she'll need to fix the engine, then collapses, gone. With no time to grieve, Furiosa works furiously, finally bringing the engine back to life. Jack jumps into action, fighting off the attackers with renewed force. As Furiosa climbs to the top of the war rig, Jack looks at her. She's a girl? But there's no time to react. Together, they take down every last one of the attackers. When the dust settles, Furiosa turns to Jack. "Stop the war rig," she says, "and leave it for me." But instead of agreeing, he fights her. She struggles, but in the end, Jack leaves her alone in the vast, empty desert. Heart-pounding, Furiosa wonders, what now? But then out of nowhere, Jack returns. He sighs, saying he's lost all his crew, and asks if she'd like to join him to help rebuild. She hesitates, but finally agrees, climbing back into the war rig by his side. Over time, Furiosa becomes just as skilled as Jack himself. During a trip to Bullet Farm, he hands her a gun and tells her, "Whenever you're ready to leave and go home, I'll help you." A few days later, they're back on the road to Gastown for another gasoline run. But when they arrive, they find the settlement in chaos. Dementus's rule has driven Gastown into ruin. As they're loading up the war rig with gasoline, Dementus steps out to meet them. Furiosa's eyes widen. It's the first time she's seen him in ages, but he doesn't even recognize her. Dementus grumbles that he's tired of being blamed for Gastown's decline and asks Jack to pass a message to Joe and the other rulers. He wants a meeting. Jack nods but insists he won't leave until his tank is full. But suddenly, Gastown's angry residents swarm, attacking the war rig. Forced to act fast, Jack revs up the engine and races out as they escape into the vast desert once more. Back at the Citadel, Jack delivers grim news to Joe about the state of Gastown. Joe and his sons look furious. They exchange a determined glance, and Joe turns to Jack, ordering him to empty his tank and head to Bullet Farm. "Get every weapon you can find," Joe commands. "We're going to war." Later, as Jack and Furiosa are alone, his gaze falls on the star chart drawn on her arm. "Where does it lead?" he asks, but she remains silent, guarded. Sensing her reluctance, he adds softly, "I only want to help you get there." Furiosa hesitates, then reveals the seed Mary had given her. The next day, they set off for Bullet Farm. Jack has a plan. He'll make Furiosa ride one of the smaller vehicles attached to the war rig. We can use it to escape, he explains, gesturing to the 2 bikes strapped on board. But when they arrive at Bullet Farm, an eerie silence greets them. They quickly realize Dementus has already taken over. Suddenly, the gates begin to close. Furiosa manages to drive out just in time, but Jack gets trapped inside. Fighting off Dementus' men, he yells, "Go, Furiosa, leave without me!" But she won't leave him. Determined, she fights her way back inside to help him, narrowly avoiding Dementus, who launches a missile her way. She barely escapes as Jack, seizing the moment, rams the war rig into the platform where Dementus stands, causing a huge explosion. Working together, Furiosa and Jack make their way out, but they're not safe yet. Dementus and his men give chase, guns blazing. Shots ring out, Jack gets hit, and Furiosa feels a bone snap in her hand. Dementus smashes their vehicle, then storms up to them. In a chilling move, Dementus has Jack tied to a bike, set to spin wildly in circles. Furiosa, her heart pounding, watches helplessly with her broken hand tied to a truck. She can't look away as Jack's life slips away. Only once he's gone does Dementus calm down. With a dark smile, he strides over to Furiosa, deciding her fate. But when he reaches her, he's met with an empty chain. She's gone. Furiosa managed to escape by breaking her own hand, even sacrificing the one with her star chart. Yet, as she stumbles into the desert, she loses too much blood and collapses. Just as darkness closes in, an unknown man spots her from the hilltop and carries her to a hidden slum near the citadel. When she wakes, horror fills her eyes. She's in a room with severed body parts scattered around. Panicked, she bolts outside, finding a guard and revealing who she is. Shocked, the guard lets her pass to speak with Joe immediately. Face to face with Joe, she learns he's already planning his raid on Gastown. Dementus doesn't know it yet, but he's about to pay for everything. Furiosa warns Joe, Dementus isn't in Gastown. He's trying to lure you out so he can take over the citadel. Joe hesitates, yet finally he believes her. With a cunning look, he sends some of his men out, making it appear like they're leaving for Gastown. And just as Furiosa predicted, Dementus takes the bait. What follows is a brutal 40-day war. Joe's men, fueled by fury, crush Dementus and his horde. Furiosa, meanwhile, has transformed. She's cut her hair, and a mechanical prosthetic now replaces her broken arm. She's watched from the sidelines too long. Now it's her turn. Racing onto the battlefield, she spots Dementus fleeing. Without hesitation, she steals Scrotus' vehicle and speeds after him. Eventually, Dementus notices her in pursuit. He glances nervously at his loyalists. "We split up," he orders. His plan works. Furiosa veers off after one of his decoys, thinking it's him. But while he's resting, she catches up. Dementus tries to run, but his bike is destroyed. He reaches for his gun, only to find the bullets gone. Defeated, Dementus drops his arms. "I have nothing left to fight for," he murmurs. Furiosa glares, asking, "Do you even remember me?" But when she speaks of what he did to her mother, Dementus' face goes pale. He stares at her, stunned. "You're just like me. You could rule the whole wasteland." But Furiosa spits back, "We're nothing alike." Though tempted to end him right there, she refrains, choosing instead to bring him back to the citadel. There, she plants the precious seed her mother gave her, using Dementus' body as fertilizer. A tree will grow, nourished by her revenge. Later, she meets with Joe's wives, offering them a chance at freedom. Though she's lost her star chart, Furiosa won't be stopped. That night, under the cover of darkness, she sneaks the wives under the war rig, preparing for their escape. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this recap, please like, subscribe, and let us know which movie you'd love us to cover next. We'll see you in the next one.